Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
World Economic Forum in Davos begins today, the hangout of the rich and the famous. But the first headlines from there have been made by an organization that works for the poor or that works for equality. It's a large NGO, one of the largest and richest in the world, called Oxfam. It's a charity. Now, what has Oxfam said? Oxfam has produced its annual inequality report saying that over the year the rich have become richer around the world. And there are some phenomenal numbers that every billionaire's fortune went up by 12% every day. That is really stupendous, or by $1 billion every day. And that the poor became poorer, global. Then they talk of India and they say in India the richest 1% saw their wealth go up by 1%. Whereas the bottom 50% only saw their wealth increase by 3%. Now, it looks quite bad, and the fact is there is a lot of inequality. There is inequality across the world. There is also now anger about inequality even in America, and angry voters are voting in different ways, and democratic systems are getting destabilized because people no longer put up with inequality. So, that is the truth. The question is how much is the inequality and how to answer this. How to answer this would then depend on what kind of data and facts you are given to work on, because if you get the wrong data or wrong facts, then you can make the wrong decisions. And that sometimes can be deliberate, because organizations or institutions that give you this data, they are ideological, they have a larger view on things, and they can nudge you in a certain direction by using the public opinion. I'm afraid that is precisely what Oxfam has done. This is a deeply flawed, I would say loaded and motivated study. For the simple reason, how do you calculate somebody's wealth? This is a strange study where they don't bother what your income is. They only look at what your assets are. So, your assets minus your liability is your wealth, which means say Mukesh Ambani or say Kumar Mangalam Bidla or Sunil Bharti Mittal or any of those people who have large corporations, large wealth, they spend very minute percentage of what they earn or their wealth on themselves. So, their incomes may be small, but their wealth is huge, and because wealth is revalued every year and a lot of their wealth is in their listed companies. So, if the stock market goes up, if the company share price goes up, then at least notionally their wealth has gone up. The value of their assets has gone up, and you net it off against their liabilities. Now, what happens to the bulk of India's middle population? Not the very poor, not the BPL, but not very rich, but in the middle. A lot of those families for the past 25 years since economic reform started, they have optimism for the future, they are aspirational, so they are investing in their future. And how do people invest in their future? They borrow. So, a young couple gets married, what does it do? Buy a motor vehicle, buy a car, so you borrow. Buy a house, so you borrow. So, you actually have no assets because you borrowed to build your assets. Now, to then say that your assets are not growing, for growing populations, for working people, which is a large percentage of our population and people who benefited from reform and growth, a lot of them will not build net assets for quite some time. They will continue to have liabilities. Just think about it, how many of you are young professionals, you are constantly borrowing and investing in your future, and even if you are not young professionals, even if you are middle class Indian parents, what do? You borrow money, you sell your land, you mortgage your cows or buffaloes to do what? To educate your children. Those children are your asset, that education is your investment. There is nothing to take account of that. Now, to say that the richest had their wealth go up by 39%. Now, their wealth is static in the sense that they don't have to use their existing wealth for anything. So, as the value of land goes up, the value of your shareholdings goes up, the value of your company on the stock markets go up, notionally your wealth has also gone up, whereas what you call as the bottom 50%, a lot of them for a long time have no surpluses to build assets. So, I hope I am clear that to calculate people's wealth and to arrive at conclusions of inequality only based on your net assets is nonsense. I am inclined to use a stronger word beginning with B and ending with T, but I would rather not do it because families watch it, and this is not Twitter, although I will not use those expressions on Twitter as well. But this is truly a nonsensical propaganda report, and it leads governments and public opinion to all kinds of wrong conclusions. So, what is the wrongest conclusion? The wrongest conclusion is, oh, how terrible, the rich are getting richer, the poor getting poorer. So, rob the rich, send them to jail, take their money. Why do they have so much? If a company, if a family has $50 billion notionally in the value of their company's stock, again I am saying notionally, you try and grab it from them or you raise another 10 percentage point tax on them, the value of that 50 billion will immediately decline to 20 billion. That is called wealth destruction. So, inequality has to be addressed, but the way to address inequality is not to destroy the wealthy or destroy wealth, because if you do not have wealth, if nobody is creating wealth, how are you going to distribute it? So, this then leads you to really flawed political economy like equal distribution of poverty. So, what are you trying to say? Are you trying to say that those who are poor, those who are left out, you should have proper distribution, government's taxes should be spent well, and taxes will only come when other people get rich and they make money. Otherwise, from where will the taxes come? You know, the idea that governments can just print currency, if you follow that approach, which is equal distribution of poverty, destruction of the wealth and wealthy, and creating this anti-wealth, anti-rich ideological and street mood, then you end up in a situation like, you have a very good example right now, Venezuela, which had a ruler called Chavez, who did some of this and he thought he could sustain it because Venezuela produces a lot of oil, crude oil, and crude oil had gone to $140+ per barrel, and he thought he could just print his way out of trouble, and then oil collapsed, and meanwhile he had finished the wealthy and the wealth creators in his country. And now where is Venezuela? Inflation is reaching 2,500%, 2,500%. In India, it is just about 2.5% now. So, think, and even now people complain that prices are going up, this is going up, that is going up. Venezuela is 2,500%. You have to take money in a wheelbarrow to be able to buy maybe a packet of milk. People are eating their own cats and dogs in that country. Why has that happened? That's happened because of this kind of fake politics, which pleases the poor by pretending to punish the rich. It drives the wealth creators out. When there is no wealth, you do not know what to tax. Then you think, because I have oil, I can export oil and make money, then oil goes down, and this has happened to every economy that tried to do something like that. So, I am not disappointed, I am not surprised that Oxfam has once again come up with this. That is their agenda. That is how they tug at the heartstrings of the rich to give them more money by way of donations, etc. And it is a good headline, but behind the headline, please look at the facts, because the idea, oh, rich are getting richer, poor are getting poorer. First of all, in India, they haven't even said the poor are getting poorer. They have said the wealth of the poor went up by 3%. Now, for poor to invest anything in wealth, in assets, they have to have surpluses. How much of the middle class today has surpluses? And if at all they have surpluses, they might be in pension funds, which I believe, I am not 100%, but from whatever I have researched right now, it seems that Oxfam will not count that as assets. They do not apply purchasing power parity. A dollar will buy one thing in India, it will buy something else in America, something else in Switzerland, something else in London, something else in Beijing. So all those things are not done. This is just meant to shock, to make the rich feel guilty, to make the not very rich or the poor hate the wealth creators and push towards the governments all the wrong solutions. For example, this same Oxfam report says that if these top rich of India billionaires are taxed 0.5% more, then India's health budget can go up 50%. In terms of numbers, you can't fight it. But what will you tax? You don't tax assets, you tax income. And if you tax assets, how do you value those assets? It is, you're just going back the Venezuela way. This method has been tried and failed, tried and failed, tried and failed. It's safe for Oxfam to continue doing it because in all the countries from where they draw their funds and where their center of gravity is, no such thing is going to happen. India's corporate tax or corporation tax is the highest in the world for major economies. In fact, one of the problems India is having right now is that because Trump has reduced taxes in America, a lot of India's investors are going away, and a lot of the global investors who are coming to India are now going to America, particularly American investors. Why should they come here and pay so much tax when they can invest the same money in America and pay much less tax? So to create wealth, nations and economies are reducing their tax rates. The answer is not to increase tax rates. Once again, it's been tried, it has failed. To those of you in India who are young, which is most of you, please do remember that when Indira Gandhi was trying to bring in the perfect socialist utopia in India, she had taken your income tax rates up to, guess, 97%. 97%. I was 16, 17 years old those days. Were we a much richer country? Were we a more equal country? We weren't. It's just that the real rich were very few. Now, even the same Oxfam survey says that every day India is producing 70 more millionaires. Where are they coming from? They are coming from the same wealth creation, which is throwing up these aspirational people upwards. And as they rise upwards, they buy assets, they pay taxes, so they employ people, so more people can rise. It is not even trickle down, it is climb up. So that process is happening. Make it faster, run your governments more efficiently, spend your taxes better, don't just throw it away in freebies to buy votes. Those are governance reform issues. Those are not ideological issues. So once again, you will read the headlines, you will read this cheap, sensational nonsense, but do remember, no economy and no country can progress by making its population hate the wealth creators. Countries grow when they start respecting the wealth creators and tax them and use those taxes well. And I will close this with a little story from a long time back. In 1990, I was covering the unraveling of the Eastern Bloc, Warsaw Pact countries, and unraveling of the Soviet Union. So I traveled first to Soviet Union and then through many countries of what was until then the communist bloc. And when we arrived in Prague, I was driving with the photographer. When we arrived in Prague, in the main square of the city, which is Wenceslas Square, we saw a streamer from top to bottom from a building hanging that said, "Welcome home, Mr. Bata." Now, I was then very young, not so experienced. I was 32, 33. And I asked people, "Who's this Mr. Bata?" They said, "Don't you know Mr. Bata? He's the one who makes shoes." And then somebody said, "But in India, we believe that Bata shoes are very popular." I said, "Yes, but what's he doing here? And why are you saying, 'Welcome, Mr. Bata'?" And they said, "That's because when socialism came, when communism came, we victimized our wealth creators. So everybody left, including Mr. Bata. And he then built up his brand and his enterprise all over the world, including in India. Now that we have thrown off the yoke of communism, we want all our entrepreneurs back. So Mr. Bata is also coming back to Prague. That's why we've put these streamers welcoming him. So please, once again, human history tells you, the history of last 70 years tells you, a society that respects its wealth creators, taxes them well, uses those taxes well, progresses. Others become third world, from third world to fourth world to fifth world, and they will get left behind. So don't buy this nonsense. This is nothing but pure old povertarianism. And what is povertarianism? I will repeat for the 50th time. It is poverty is my birthright. A real povertarian is who says poverty is my birthright, and I shall make sure that I do everything in my powers to make sure that you have it. Which means गरीबी मेरा जन्म सिद्ध अधिकार है और मैं पूरी कोशिश करूँगा कि आपको मिल जाए, और मैं तो अपना फाउंडेशन का वाइन पीऊँगा और चीज़ खाऊँगा और मस्ती करूँगा. So you have to be careful about this propaganda and take it in your stride. Yes, there is inequality, but it is not like this, and this is no way to address inequality.